It's so nice to have you on my podcast, The Point Three Leader. I want to introduce everyone to this amazing woman here who is a dear friend of mine, Tracy Christ. She is a leadership and mental wellness coach, and she is also an author of this incredible book called The 21 Day Shadow Work Journey. We're going to talk about that today. So thank you so much for being here, Tracy.
My pleasure.
So let's start with what exactly is the shadow? We hear about that, the shadow side. We hear this word, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah, I think the word itself stirs up a little bit of woo-woo, spiritual kind of connotations, or maybe something a little scary that's within ourselves, a dark side, so to speak. But that's really not what it is at all. It actually the term came about from Carl Jung, who is a humanist, a psychologist who's contributed greatly to the field of psychology, who first kind of brought forth this concept of us having this shadow aspect to ourselves. And shadow simply means something that we haven't noticed or shined a light on or have awareness about. And it turns out that we've learned in psychology that much of our behavior is dictated through unconscious or subconscious patterns and conditioning that has developed early in life that has us behaving in the ways that we may not want to or behaving in ways that we're not aware of or why we do it, or can't see certain behaviors in ourselves, or are preventing ourselves from reaching our full potential because we have some of these limiting beliefs that were built early in life without really our conscious awareness.
So you said subconscious. So our shadow is it the subconscious part of our brain?
I I would say it exists in our subconscious.
Got it.
Yeah.
And how does it, when does it form? How does it form?
You know, we all have it, and we all have conditioning that happens to us early in life. It happens in the types of families and values we've grown up with. It happens in the school system in terms of, getting an A or failing or a mistake. And it happens in our culture in terms of the norms that are expected. It happens just in terms of just what is appropriate, right? What are we taught is appropriate? What are we taught is important? What are we taught that we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do? What are we taught that what is good and bad? And so that begins to shape um, how we need to behave in order essentially to survive. Now, this is a very human instinct. Our instinct is probably the number one powerful instinct that we all that drives us. And so part of that human instinct for survival means if I'm going to be accepted, if I'm going to be loved, if I'm going to be given approval, this is how I need to be.
Mhm.
And so that you can begin to see then how what we're taught begins to become very deeply ingrained in our survival and what it means to be accepted. And if we're not accepted as a human or within the human kind of circle that we're in, we don't survive. Everyone needs acceptance. Everyone needs connection. Everyone needs a sense of approval, and for a sense of well-being. So that's how it comes about.
Mm. And how does it show up for people? Like, can you give us some examples of how the shadow can show up in our lives, in our personal lives, maybe at work?
Yes, I think I saw it a lot at work, in terms of the coaching that I do. So I see it showing up for the people that I coach in terms of frustrations, irritations, imposter syndrome, overwork, not being able to give themselves a break, a lot of negative self-talk. So yes, things outside of ourselves that trigger us. And when I say trigger, I mean something that gets us emotionally reactive in a way that we don't really want to be emotionally reactive and don't think we should be, that's usually like a little arrow pointing to something in our subconscious that needs to be looked at, that needs to be invited into the light to examine, to explore, to understand, not to shun and say this is bad. And that's what I love about shadow work. We may think we have negative traits, right? But really, those negative traits are aspects of the shadow expressing themselves in the light of, or I should say, in the shadow of not understanding that part of yourself.
Mm.
And so exploring the shadow and jumping in and doing some of that work through reflection questions and so forth gives us an opportunity to um, become more whole by seeing parts of ourselves with love and compassion and acceptance. And through a process called integration, after you discover these aspects of yourself, you can begin to see them as suppressed power that can be, you know, transmuted into opportunities for growth, intentional ways of being, creating new patterns for yourself now that you have the awareness of what was holding you back before.
Mm. That's powerful. Tracy, was there ever a moment or an experience in your life where shadow work helped maybe change how you related to yourself or change the way that you maybe saw life differently?
You know, I'm fairly new to shadow work in my life. I've always been interested in personal development from a very young age, from my early 20s. I've always been trying to understand myself more and understand people more and learn how to be more effective as a person and also to feel that kind of inner strength, to feel strong, not to be afraid of things and not let fear overtake my ability to, go after what I want. So, um, it was later in life when I heard this term shadow and realized that it actually applies to a lot of the work I have been doing personally in my life and a lot of the work I do with the people that I coach, which is really examining um, why do I have these traits that are actually harmful to me, right? And for instance, in my case, that would be kind of a hyperachievement mentality where I'm happiest when I'm achieving something, when I did it. And if I didn't do it to the level of my expectation, I just it really doesn't feel good at all.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to keep living in this space where I needed to keep achieving something in order to feel good about myself. And that would be a perfect example. And I think a lot of people could probably identify with that as how do I, begin to feel a sense of appreciation for myself when I'm not achieving.
Mm.
And that could be the beginning of discovering more about yourself because there is so much more to appreciate. And it's almost like the secret of being happy, right? Like if you want to be happy, you can't depend on achievement and
Mm.
success for happiness. It's not out there. And happiness is always in here. It's something that people who study happiness, now that there are happiness classes in college, have learned is that it's in here. So you might need to peel some layers away of what you thought happiness looked like
Mm.
in order to get to the core of it. But innately, it's in there.
Yeah, I think that message can resonate and connect with probably everyone that's watching this. I think that, a lot of the people that are probably watching are high achievers, they're high performers, they're, successful
Mm.
from external measures, but they may still feel like maybe that's not enough, or maybe there's still some self-comparison, wondering, is this it? I've done the thing that I wanted to do. I've gotten that promotion. I've gotten the titles, the accolades. I've made the money. I've done all those things, and they still might feel like something's missing.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's potentially uh, something that something to explore, that maybe it has to do with your shadow self?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't hurt, right? It's like, why am I driven this way?
Mhm.
right? Why do I feel that need? It's just asking some of those introspective questions. Where did that come from?
Mhm.
Right? Can I identify a time in life where I realized that if I wasn't successful, that I wasn't going to receive approval,
Mhm.
right? And is that approval, I mean, approval from your parents, they are your world when you're young, right? And, there's a schism we see it all the time with teenage rebellion, right? There's a real schism sometimes if you kind of are deciding, I need to figure out who I am and this is who I want to be, but it's not aligned with how I was raised or what my parents expect of me. That's actually a very healthy thing to do. But many of us don't do that because we want to live up to those expectations of our culture, of our family. That feels safer, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to have that schism. You don't want to have that rebellion because then you lose all of that. So it takes courage to start exploring parts of yourself that you might have ignored or denied or even disowned,
Mhm.
because that may cause some conflict in terms of what you think you should be and what you've been told to be. But
Mm.
that is the beginning of becoming whole.
Yeah. And I find in working with my clients is all of the things that they're struggling with today can all be connected back to childhood and
Mm.
and how the expectations of what their parents may have expected of them, or what they believe, what they perceived that they had to do in order to earn their attention or their love. And how a lot of people end up becoming these high performers because that is the thing that gave them the external validation that they needed as a child, right? To yes, you are worthy, yes, you are adding value, yes, all of those things. And which is great. It's a great motivator, but again, it is not the thing. It is not the thing, or maybe the only thing that is
Yeah.
going to satisfy us and make us happy. Yeah.
Yeah, because along with that conditioning comes some beliefs, right? Beliefs are powerful. Beliefs, could be very helpful or very harmful. And
Mhm.
in coaching, we have something that we discover with people that are called limiting beliefs.
Mhm.
And that is really kind of where I stop with coaching. I don't go into psychology because I'm not a psychologist, and that's why I wanted to write the book because this isn't me coaching someone individually, but in coaching, we really do start to dig in and discover what limiting beliefs are keeping you from your potential,
Mhm.
right? And that's really what got me into wanting to write this book because I wanted to be able to take people deeper, into that subconscious and where do these limiting beliefs come from. But once we discover our limiting beliefs and are able to kind of address them and reshape them or rewrite them, it's like rewriting your narrative. All of a sudden, you have all of this new potential available to you when you realize you had these negative
Mhm.
beliefs or limiting beliefs holding you back all along. Most of us aren't even conscious of what those are.
Mhm. Yeah, hence why we call it the shadow, right? It's
Yeah.
it's like there in the background. It's there. It's there. It's never kind of it's there hiding, lurking in the background. And then, the shadow work is really the way that you can bring it to the forefront and integrate it. I really love that language because it's not about suppressing or saying, okay, I'm gonna go away with this, side of me. It's really integrating that part of who we are, and accepting and acknowledging that, okay, this is something that yes, I've been conditioned this way, and perhaps I want to change certain things, but I'm not rejecting that part of myself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a real simple example of that is maybe, I got some really beautiful feedback from a reader once that said, I used to think that my jealousy and impatience were negative traits, but now I see them as opportunities to grow or messages
Mhm.
about what I need. Right. So jealousy is really just a message of, oh, I want that. Like you can transmute that then into, okay, I'm going to acknowledge. I'm not going to focus on, oh, I'm jealous. I'm going to focus on, oh, that might be something I want to go for. How might I want to start going for that? What do I need in order to move in that direction? It's just like a little identifier of saying, oh, maybe that is something that you want. Otherwise, why would you be jealous, right? So we have some what we call negative traits that are the first, I think, most obvious invitations into exploring the shadow.
Yes, I love that you say that, and that's exactly what some of the stuff that I do with the work that I do is explore emotions,
Mm,
and emotions are really they're signals, they're little
yeah.
cues that our body gives us to let us know about our needs. Like it kind of tells
Yeah.
us, okay, this is what's happening, and this is what you need. And if we can pay attention to those emotions, not judge them as good or bad. They can be positive or negative, but they are not necessarily good or bad. They just are. And if we can understand what the message is behind those emotions, then we can reframe and look at the situation as an opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. And when we talk about emotional intelligence, right, we've all heard about how important that is in business and in leadership. Self-awareness is one of the major components of that. Well, that's all that shadow work is. It's developing that self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So tell us a little bit about your book. This is the 21-day shadow work journey, and this is a step-by-step guide to uncover hidden blocks, break free from limiting patterns, and rewire your brain to thrive. Tell us a little bit about this book.
Yes, so it's broken up into three sections or essentially 3 weeks. And the reason I chose to put it in the format of 21 days is simply because it's general knowledge that it takes about 21 days to form a new habit. And really, what we're doing here in the book, day by day, it's one lesson a day, followed by a few reflection questions, which is then followed by an application or an exercise, a practical exercise for the day or for the next day after you're reading. And basically, if you do this every day, for 21 days, you are really going to build up your ability to be self-aware. You're going to be discovering things every day about yourself. And it won't have to be done in a corner, with your book journal writing. You are actually now, after you do some learning and reflection, now applying it in the real world and kind of observing your reactions.
Mhm.
And that's the beginning of the first kind of phase is to start discovering what's in my shadow. What are those shadow traits? What is triggering it? What am I projecting? Learning about where the shadow lives and how it came about. The second phase is learning to work with your shadow. So there are some techniques and tools and exercises to begin to not let that shadow kind of drive your behavior, but start thinking about, what are my values that I want to drive my behavior? What are some things I can begin to do to give space for these negative emotions I might be having, right? Just
Mhm.
learning tools to start working with those shadow aspects, the fear, things like that. Then the third phase is focusing on real integration of creating a vision for your life, becoming, living more intentionally, um, conscious living, really becoming now the creator of your way of being, as opposed to kind of having the shadow aspects drive it. And it's also the beginning of really finding authentic self-confidence as well and creating more wholeness in your life. And there is a spiritual aspect to it because we talk about wholeness, we talk about the true self. And part of the kind of training in this book is connecting with that part of yourself that we all have, that essence in here that was there perfect before you were conditioned. right? No, we're all conditioned, and conditioned isn't necessarily a bad thing. All the conditioning we received is usually given with great love, right? And good intentions. So we don't want to have to look at our past and say, oh, that was bad. It was just, everyone is doing the best with what they have, right? And so what was so great about shadow work is you begin to identify then with your authenticity,
Mhm.
right? Who am I beyond what I was conditioned to be? What do I really want? What do I care about? What's most important to me? What do I desire? You can start asking yourself those questions in the third phase and start creating that for yourself. So I find it a very empowering book. The Rewire Your Brain to Thrive, I think, is a real key to this book because that's what people find so difficult about change, right? It's very hard to change our patterns. And so this book actually gives you actual practical exercises to rewire your brain every day so that by the end of 21 days, it's starting to feel a little bit more, oh, yeah, I can do this. This is natural for me, as opposed to this is very difficult and very foreign because new things always feel that way in the very beginning.
Yeah, I love the book, and I like how it integrates. There's a little bit of lesson. You're teaching something, then there's some exercises, and you can write right in there. And I, for personally, I find it very helpful that it's all in one place, and then I can just pick up where I left off the next day or the next week or whatever, and go back. And so I really enjoyed this book very much.
I'm so glad.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say to someone who's curious about shadow work, but they're like, "Oh, I don't know about this," and they're hesitant? Some people sometimes share that they're hesitant because they don't know what they're going to find in their shadow, right? So they're
Yeah.
hesitant to start.
Well, you know what? We talk about readiness a lot in coaching. And sometimes, like I sometimes will ask people, like, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of readiness to change?
Mm.
Right? Are you at the one, are you just wanting to kind of really think about it and understand what that could be? At a 10 is like, I am ready to take action if I knew what to do tomorrow. Right? And we can fall anywhere on that scale. So I think that's kind of a good place for people to start is how ready am I to really change? Do I just want to kind of learn a little bit and understand it? Or do I really want to take steps? And so what I would say is, if you're on the lower side, maybe get the book,
Mm.
right? Because it's not invasive. You can decide to do the exercises, or you can just read through it. I heard from a reader where she said, "I know this book is supposed to take 21 days, but I became quickly engrossed, and I just wanted to read through all the material because it was so fascinating to me, the concepts." And so that's fine too. You can just get some exposure, right, to the lessons and not necessarily do the exercises. A little further in on your scale of readiness, maybe you do the reflection. Maybe you do commit some time daily to doing that and the exercises. And if you want to even take it further, maybe you go get a coach, right? You work with a coach and you actually interact with some of your awarenesses and say, I kind of want to work with these. I have this awareness about myself and I want to change. And then you have that kind of accountability partner working with you as well. So that's how I would see kind of ways that you could address it.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Where can our followers, our readers, where can they find you?
My book is on Amazon. And so you could either get it on Kindle or paperback or hardback, and it's also available on Audible now as well.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Tracy. This was an amazing conversation. And I think a lot of people will find value in just exploring their shadow side and get the book. You guys, this is a really, really great book. Thank you, Tracy, so much for being here.